there was a reason to listen to any of these episodes, and I could provide just at least one takeaway for you listening. I really just hope that that main takeaway is that you have a yearning to learn more. You're listening to the Taylor Koo Podcast. Join me as we do a deep dive into my passions and learning lessons in entrepreneurship, real estate, business, sports, art, and so much more. I hope you enjoy the show. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Taylor Koo Podcast. This is the first episode and sort of an introduction of what you can expect for the rest of this podcast, what this is used for. If you've been following me for some time, I greatly appreciate it. And you might be wondering what happened to the previous podcast. Well, it's not because I don't like multifamily and multifamily investing. I still think it's a great vehicle to invest in. Since I started that last podcast called the Multifamily Artist Podcast, it's still up there. I actually landed a gig with a firm doing investor relations for multifamily syndications, storage syndications, car wash syndications. And so the podcast really served its purpose. And I've learned so many different things, from the time where I stopped recording for the podcast to almost 2 years now being a part of the firm. And when it comes to raising capital, building connections, sales, negotiation, there's all these different factors and aspects of what I have learned. And this is the podcast where I hope to share some of those learnings. But I didn't want it to be pigeonholed to just real estate though, which I'm doing an awful job about about carrying y'all throughout the motivations of what this is really used for. But the challenge that I had with the previous podcast, the Multifamily Artist Podcast, is that I felt pigeonholed to only speaking about multifamily, when in actuality, I have so many different interests outside of that I just wanted to have a platform where I can explore all those different interests and then interview experts within their respective field. And I mean, to be quite honest, too, if we're going to be talking about the podcast, and if you were a former guest on this, I'm not going to lie, I think I did a pretty terrible job in, well, okay, I wouldn't say terrible, but I didn't do the best job in running the podcast. I definitely felt like I burned some bridges. Some episodes were unreleased, and I didn't really mention it. And it just, and to be quite honest, I think a lot of the reason why is because I just felt a little weird interviewing other operators while I was working for an operator. Operator means company or firm. And so I felt like I was interviewing other firms on the show, which, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it's not a great excuse, especially if, we recorded, but it just felt a little awkward for me. And, like I mentioned before, I felt like it served its purpose. It's like I'm putting in the past, moving forward, because I actually do miss the platform of podcasting, just being able to speak your mind, share your opinion, and then also, engage with a lot of just different individuals in their show. And so moving forward, what you can expect from this podcast. So like I mentioned, this podcast is not going to be all about real estate. I still love real estate, like I said, but that's not the only thing that's going to be here. I'm obsessed with business, entrepreneurship, content creation, sports, marketing, arts, dance. And so I felt like I've built a nice network, and I want to expand that network with just other creatives and with people that are experts within the fields that I just mentioned, to bring them onto the podcast and to learn from them, because I do have that fascination with them. This is definitely going to be a little bit more of a selfish podcast, but in a different way than what it was before. First off, please forgive me for being selfish with having all of these different interests. I want to stay true and genuine to learning something completely new and being genuinely curious about it instead of just doing it for content. So I'm just really trying to just maintain the authenticity of what I'm very much so interested in. I think one of the challenges that I had within the multifamily space is I didn't necessarily know how to make different conversations. It almost felt like I was having a lot of the same conversations, and it wasn't a knock on any of the guests either. I think it was just a matter of, you know, this was the industry. I mean, you talk about real estate, there's only so much that you can talk about, and I think I could have done a better job of just navigating some of those conversations outside of just multifamily instead of just talking about, the terminology, why it's great, et cetera. And so I do want to get more personal and really just not really come into it with an angle, but really just coming into it with like a genuine curiosity. Um, it the last podcast did feel a little bit more so like I was just trying to get something out of my guest, whereas I'm trying to now give as much value as I can to my guests, but then also my audience. I don't even know if this makes sense of me just being me saying that I'm being selfish, but I'm just speaking off the cuff here, which actually brings me to my next point is that this podcast is really also about reps. I suck at talking directly to the camera, and I'm trying to get better at it, to be quite honest. Usually, when I record my YouTube videos, I have a transcript where it's like right there, and I write my script, and I literally write in my jokes, my pauses, and I can take a breath. But with speaking directly to camera, freestyling this, it's just a different skill set that I just want to be a little bit better at. I think this could help me in speaking on stage. This could help me in speaking on YouTube videos, so I don't have to script absolutely everything and I can just speak off the cuff. And so that is also what I'm candidly. I mean, that's also what I'm trying to do is just build these reps. Because as you can tell, I'm just talking randomly about just a bunch of random stuff. But I think if there was a reason to listen to any of these episodes and I could provide just at least one takeaway for you listening, I really just hope that that main takeaway is that you have a yearning to learn more for whatever you're looking to try and learn from. I think there's so much value in leaning into that curiosity, and I hope that this encourages you to lean into it a little bit more because I mean there's so much knowledge within the world, and I am very fascinated by all of this knowledge. I've also come to realize too, with just like me as one of my strengths, I feel like I'm not really okay. It's not that I'm not really good at one specific thing. I actually did this exercise, and if you can, I would recommend doing this exercise as well. But you ask, maybe like 5 to 10 of your closest friends, family members, mentors, where you ask them 3 questions. Here, actually, I'm going to pull it up just because I want to make sure I'm not screwing up the questions either. You ask them 3 questions. What are my strengths and what can you count on me for? Number 2, what are my weaknesses and what can you not count on me for? And then number 3, what is my unique ability and what am I best in the world at? I have been not an expert in a lot of different things, but I feel like I'm like pretty good at doing a lot of different things, but not at the expert level. And I think if you just look at my LinkedIn or my track record of how many times I've switched jobs, I think I've gotten to a certain point where I was like, oh yeah, like I'm pretty good. I can even take this to the next level. And for some reason I stop. And I think a part of it has to do with shiny object syndrome. But one of the main, and I feel like Alex Hormozi is going to niche slap me because I have all these interests, but I was talking to somebody else, another good friend of mine, and he said it's okay to lean into having so many interests. I think it's also a superpower to also have and want to learn more and be able to adapt and really just think a lot quicker, and break down these concepts to on a simpler level. And so this is me leaning into the strength of being able to learn and connect with people and have a conversation and make them feel comfortable. That was one of the strengths that people have said, where I'm a little bit more of a people person. So leaning into that, I guess also leaning into the shiny object syndrome too. I'm not really. I don't even know where I'm going with this, but unique ability to connect. Anyways, I mean, at the time that I'm recording this Origin episode, there have actually been I've already recorded about 3 guests already as it is. Okay, so format for the show, probably going to be 2 episodes, per week. There's going to be like 4 guests. We're still going to, this is what I took away from the previous podcast. There's still going to be a fall in love with you section and then an action item section respective to whatever field that they're in. So like, for example, next week, there's going to be Seth Gilmore, a really good friend of mine. He's going to be talking about getting into MBA school. And then if you did want to get into MBA school, what that would look like, because he's an MBA consultant or MBA school consultant to help people get into MBA school. And so those are broken down, but then let's say it's going to be a week of just me and I don't have a guest. I'm probably just going to post 2 episodes that week, Tuesdays and Fridays, just to maintain the schedule. And then it could just be a random topic that I've learned or just some talking point that I thought was really interesting. So yeah, bear with me. I hope this is fun for you, and I'm excited for y'all to take part of this journey, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening to the Taylor Coup podcast. If you gain any value out of this episode, I'd really appreciate it if you share this with your friends. Hopefully they can get the same value as well as you did. And also leave a comment and review on whatever podcasting platform that you're listening on. I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you at the next episode.